I never thought the worst betrayal of my life would begin over chicken piccata and wine I'd paid for. The private dining room at Harlan's Grill had become our monthly tradition. Liora insisted on it after she married Grant, claiming family time mattered more than ever now. I wanted to believe her. Every fourth Thursday, same table, same warm lighting, same illusion that we were still connected. Tonight felt different, though I couldn't name why. I sat across from my daughter and son-in-law, watching them share glances I wasn't meant to catch. The conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. When I mentioned the upcoming product launch, Grant nodded politely and changed the subject to vacation plans. When I asked about Liora's work, she gave me 3 sentences and turned to Grant's anecdote about his office. I'd built Trevon Industrial from nothing, 54 years old, and I still arrived before dawn most days. My hands had touched every blueprint, every contract, every decision that mattered. But sitting here, watching my daughter check her watch for the 3rd time, I felt like a stranger at my own table. Grant ordered another bottle without asking my preference. He had that easy confidence of men who'd never had to build anything themselves. Strategic development manager at Marlowe Corp., my largest competitor. When he and Liora started dating, I'd push down my concerns. Love finds its own path, and she'd always been independent. But tonight, something shifted behind his eyes when I mentioned our expansion into the Mid-Atlantic corridor. "Market's changing fast these days," he said, swirling his wine. "You have to be aggressive." I nodded. Let him think I was tired, distracted, past my prime. People revealed more when they thought you weren't listening. Liora touched my phone where it sat face down beside my plate. "You should really upgrade, Dad. This model's ancient." "It works," I said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The same smile she'd given me when she was 16 and lying about where she'd been on Friday night. I'd known then too, but I'd let it slide. Trusted her to find her way. Maybe that had been my first mistake. Grant leaned back in his chair, the picture of relaxed confidence. "Soren, you ever think about slowing down? Enjoying what you've built?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I took a sip of wine, buying time to read the subtext. Was this genuine concern, or were they testing the waters? Seeing if I'd announce retirement, clear the path for whatever they had planned? "I enjoy the work," I said simply. "But at some point," Liora added, her voice soft, almost gentle, "you have to think about legacy. What comes next?" There it was again, that subtle pressure toward the exit. I'd been feeling it for months now, these little comments about succession planning, about bringing in fresh perspectives, about the natural evolution of leadership. I'd assumed it was normal concern. A daughter worried about her aging father working too hard. Now I wondered what else it might be. The meal ended with the same hollow pleasantries that had marked the past 6 months. Grant picked up the check before I could reach for it, making a show of generosity with money from a company that wanted mine broken and sold for parts. "We should do this more often," Liora said, gathering her purse. "Maybe twice a month?" "Sure," I said, though something in my gut twisted at the suggestion. They left first. Liora kissed my cheek, and I smelled her perfume, the same one her mother used to wear. For a moment, I wanted to pull her aside, ask her if everything was okay, if she was happy, if I'd done something wrong. Instead, I said goodbye and watched them go. I sat alone at the table for another few minutes, finishing my wine, watching the candle burn down. The room felt larger, without them in it. Emptier. I'd been feeling that emptiness a lot lately, ever since Liora moved out, ever since her mother passed, ever since the company became the only constant in my life. When I finally stood to leave, my legs felt heavy. Tired. Maybe Grant was right. Maybe I was getting old. I was halfway to my car when I realized my phone wasn't in my pocket. The main street was quiet now, most shops closed for the night. My car sat under a streetlight, patient and waiting. But without my phone, I felt oddly vulnerable, disconnected. I turned back toward the restaurant. The dining room was dark when I returned. The main restaurant had closed, chairs stacked on tables, the kitchen quiet. But light spilled from the hallway leading to the private rooms. I found Ethan Moore, the shift supervisor, standing outside our room. He was holding my phone. "Mr. Trevon," he said, and his voice was strange, careful. "I need to show you something." Before I could respond, he stepped back inside and locked the door behind us. The click of that lock changed everything. "I shouldn't be doing this," Ethan said. He was maybe 38, lean and watchful in the way bartenders learn to be. We'd exchanged small talk during previous dinners, nothing more. He'd always been professional, courteous, the kind of service worker who remembered your preferences without making a show of it. Now he looked at me with something between pity and resolve. Doing what? I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he led me down the service corridor, past the kitchen where stainless steel gleamed in the darkness, to a small office I'd never noticed. Inside was a desk covered in paperwork, a filing cabinet, and a monitor showing 4 camera angles. We installed the dining room cameras 6 months ago, Ethan explained. After some incidents with customers claiming we'd overcharged them, the angles cover everything, every table, every corner. Insurance company insisted on it. He pulled up a chair and gestured for me to sit. My phone sat on the desk between us, face down, innocent. I was doing my closing check, he continued. Saw you'd left this behind. Was going to bring it to you, but... He paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I noticed something when I was reviewing tonight's footage. Policy is to check any table where items are left behind in case of disputes. You know, he said, she said situations about bills or service. What did you see? My voice sounded calm. Inside, my heart had started to hammer. Ethan clicked a timestamp. 8:47 p.m. The screen showed our table from above, empty plates being cleared by a server I recognized. Grant and Liora remained seated, relaxed, comfortable. This is after you stepped away to take that call, Ethan said. I remembered. A supplier with a question about tomorrow's shipment. Something about delivery timing. I'd been gone maybe 3 minutes, standing in the lobby where cell reception was better. On screen, Liora looked toward the door, watched me disappear from view. Then she reached across the table. Her hand moved quickly, practiced. She picked up my phone, turned it over, and swiped the screen. It unlocked. I leaned forward. How did she... Keep watching, Ethan said quietly. Leora's thumbs moved across the screen, scrolling, pausing. She turned the phone toward Grant, who leaned in, studying whatever she'd found. His expression was focused, analytical. Not the casual curiosity of someone glancing at a text message. This was purposeful examination. Then she lifted her own phone and took a photo. Then another. Her movements were efficient, unhurried. No fumbling, no hesitation. She knew exactly what she was looking for. Grant glanced at the doorway again, checking, keeping watch. His body language was relaxed, but his eyes were sharp, alert. Liora scrolled deeper into my phone, navigating through folders with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. She photographed 2 more screens, then carefully placed my phone back where it had been. She wiped the screen with her napkin, removing fingerprints. By the time I returned to the table 60 seconds later, nothing looked disturbed. My phone sat exactly where I'd left it. Liora was sipping her wine. Grant was telling some story about a colleague. The timestamp read 8:50 p.m., 3 minutes. That's all it took. I can email you this footage, Ethan said. Or delete it. Your call. But I thought... He trailed off, then met my eyes. I thought you should know. I stared at the frozen image of my daughter, phone in hand, face calm and focused. Professional. This wasn't a daughter curious about her father's life. This was something else entirely. The files she was photographing, I said slowly. Could you see which ones? Ethan rewound, zoomed in. The resolution wasn't perfect, but good enough. I recognized the folder structure. My internal project directories. The ones I kept on my phone for reference during negotiations, during late-night strategy sessions, during moments when I needed quick access to critical information. Specifically, Project Cascade, our planned expansion into automated materials processing, 18 months of development, millions in R&D, partnership agreements with 3 major manufacturers. The kind of information that, in the right hands, could derail everything we'd built, or give a competitor exactly what they needed to beat us to market. Marlowe Corp announced a new automation initiative last week, I heard myself say, targeting the same sector, same timeline, same technological approach. Ethan said nothing. He didn't need to. I watched the footage 3 more times, memorizing every detail, the angle of Leora's hand, the way Grant checked his watch, keeping time, the practiced coordination, the casual betrayal. This wasn't the first time. I knew it in my bones. You don't move that smoothly, that confidently, unless you've rehearsed, unless it's become routine. How long do you keep this footage? I asked. 90 days, usually, but I can archive this separately if you want. Keep it indefinitely. Do that. And Ethan? I stood, picking up my phone. The device felt different now, contaminated. Thank you. Most people would have looked the other way. He shrugged, and something dark flickered across his face. Most people didn't spend 20 years watching their old man get screwed by business partners who smiled at Sunday dinner. I know what betrayal looks like when it wears a familiar face. I understood then. He wasn't doing this for me. He was doing it because he recognized the shape of betrayal. Had lived through his own version, probably. Knew the particular pain of trust weaponized against you. Send me the footage, I said. All angles, include timestamps for every time we've dined here in the past 6 months. His eyebrows rose. You think this has been... I think I need to be thorough. He nodded slowly. I'll have it to you by morning. Encrypted file. Your email? I gave it to him. We shook hands. His grip was firm, steady, the handshake of someone who understood that some betrayals required documentation before confrontation. I left through the back exit, phone heavy in my pocket. The parking lot was empty except for my car and Ethan's truck. Somewhere across town, Liora and Grant were probably already forwarding those photos, celebrating another successful extraction. Probably laughing about how easy it was, how blind I'd been. My hands didn't shake until I was behind the wheel. Then they trembled so badly I couldn't get the key in the ignition for 30 seconds. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, engine off, watching the streetlights flicker on. The footage kept replaying in my mind. Leora's practiced swipe, Grant's casual surveillance, the way she'd wiped my screen clean, erasing evidence of her fingerprints like she'd done it before, like she'd been trained, or like she'd trained herself through repetition. How long had this been happening? I pulled up my phone's recent activity. Nothing unusual in the logs. No unfamiliar logins, no suspicious access times. She'd been careful, or I'd been blind. Probably both. Probably I'd been so desperate to believe in our relationship that I'd ignored every warning sign. Grant worked in strategic development at Marlowe. His job was identifying market opportunities and neutralizing competitive threats. When he started dating Liora 2 years ago, I'd convinced myself his interest was genuine, that his questions about my work were just the natural curiosity of someone trying to connect with his father-in-law. Now I saw it clearly. Every dinner conversation, every casual inquiry about project timelines and supplier relationships, every time Liora steered discussion toward my business challenges, every sympathetic comment about how hard I worked, how much stress I carried. They'd been mining me for months, maybe longer, building a psychological profile, identifying my blind spots, learning my patterns, and I'd helped them. Opened up over wine about obstacles we were facing, about competitors causing problems, about the lonely burden of leadership. I'd given them everything they needed to destroy me. I thought about calling her, confronting this directly, the way I used to handle problems when she was young. Sit down, talk it through, find the truth. But this wasn't a broken curfew or a failed exam. This was corporate espionage dressed in family clothing. This was calculated, systematic, deliberate. And confrontation would only warn them. Give them time to cover tracks, destroy evidence, build plausible deniability. No. If I was going to do this, I needed to do it right. I started the engine and drove home, keeping my speed exactly at the limit. My house sat dark and quiet, the way it had since Liora moved out 5 years ago. Her mother's photos still lined the hallway, wedding pictures, baby pictures, graduations. I'd never had the heart to take them down, never had the heart to admit that the family those pictures represented no longer existed. In my home office, I locked the door and opened my laptop. Project Cascade files filled the screen. I'd been so careful with distribution, limiting access to 3 senior engineers and myself. The plans existed in exactly 4 places: our secure server, my laptop, my phone, and a backup drive in my attorney's safe. Yet Marlowe Corp's announcement last week had contained details eerily similar to our approach. Same modular framework, same efficiency targets, same integration protocols, different branding. But the architecture underneath was identical. I'd assumed parallel development. Great minds thinking alike. The kind of convergent evolution that happens in competitive industries. Now I knew better. I pulled up our project timeline and cross-referenced it with Marlowe's public moves. The pattern emerged like a photograph in developing fluid, becoming clearer with each passing moment. March. We finalized Phase 1 specifications. April. Marlowe announced a strategic pivot into automation. June. We secured our first manufacturer partnership. July. Marlowe approached the same company with a competing offer, undercutting our terms. September. We completed prototype testing. October. Marlowe filed 3 patents that seemed to anticipate our next moves. December. We planned the Mid-Atlantic expansion. This week, Grant started asking questions about regional opportunities. Every time we advanced, they matched us. But they weren't just matching. They were anticipating, getting ahead, moving faster because they knew what came next. Because my daughter told them, my phone buzzed, a text from Liora. "Thanks for dinner, Dad. Love you." I stared at those words until they stopped meaning anything. until they became just symbols on a screen, empty characters forming empty sentiment. Then I opened a new document and began taking notes, not for confrontation, not yet. First, I needed to understand the full scope, how deep this went, how many dinners had been operations instead of family time, how much damage they'd already done. My calendar showed our next scheduled dinner in 4 weeks. Before that, though, was the Regional Industry Summit. 3 days of networking, panels, and partnership announcements. Both Trevon Industrial and Marlowe would be presenting. Major investors would be there, media coverage, industry leaders. Grant had mentioned it at dinner, casually, asking if I'd confirmed my attendance, if I was planning to announce anything significant. Now I wondered what they had planned, what final move they were setting up, what information they still needed to complete whatever scheme they were building. I worked until 3 a.m, building a timeline, identifying gaps in my security, tracking every conversation I could remember. When I finally shut the laptop, my eyes burned and my coffee had gone cold, but I had clarity. They thought I was declining, aging out, too tired to notice the knives, too trusting to see the trap. Let them keep thinking that. Let them get comfortable. Because I'd learned something tonight that they hadn't counted on. I was still capable of patience, still capable of planning, still capable of the cold, calculated discipline that had built my company from nothing. They'd underestimated me. That would be their mistake. Over the next 2 weeks, I became invisible in plain sight. At the office, I let my assistant reschedule meetings without pushback. When executives pitched ideas, I nodded and asked them to take the lead. I arrived late and left early, something I'd never done in 30 years. Missed strategy sessions, delegated decisions I would normally have controlled personally. People noticed. I could see it in their careful glances, the way conversations paused when I entered rooms, the whispered speculation in the break room, the concerned emails from department heads. Good. Let them think the fire was going out. Let them prepare for my inevitable decline. Meanwhile, I watched. I started taking my lunch at a downtown cafe with windows facing Marlowe's headquarters. The place served overpriced sandwiches and weak coffee, but the view was perfect. I could see their main entrance, their parking garage, their ground floor conference rooms. 3 times in the first week, I saw Liora and Grant meeting there during lunch hours, screens open, heads together. They looked comfortable, happy, building something. On my daughter's face, I recognized the same focused determination I used to see when she was younger, working on projects she believed in, science fair presentations, college applications, her first job hunt. She'd inherited that from me, the ability to commit completely, to pursue a goal with single-minded intensity. I'd been proud of that quality once. Now I watched her photograph something on Grant's laptop and felt nothing but cold assessment. I pulled footage from my building's security cameras, going back 8 months. The request raised eyebrows in the IT department, but I was still CEO. They complied. Found 6 instances of Liora visiting during lunch hours, always signing in as meeting with Dad. But the log showed I'd been in external meetings those days, out of the building entirely. She'd gone somewhere else, to the engineering floor probably, where Project Cascade was developed, where my lead engineers worked, people who'd known Liora since she was a child and would never question her presence, who'd probably shown her around proudly, happy to see the boss's daughter taking interest in the family business. I checked with our IT department casually, asking about access protocols during a routine security review. Learned that family members could use guest Wi-Fi without logging individual sessions. Building access for relatives didn't require the same documentation as external visitors. She'd been thorough, found every gap in our security, exploited every assumption of trust. So had I. I started carrying a second phone, a cheap prepaid I'd bought with cash at a convenience store 3 towns over. Used it to photograph every instance of suspicious timing, every correlation between our internal milestones and Marlowe's public moves. Built a shadow archive that existed nowhere in any official system. Evidence they couldn't track, couldn't anticipate, couldn't counter. I documented everything. Dates, times, locations, cross-referenced Liora's building visits with project developments, matched Grant's casual questions from dinner conversations with Marlowe's subsequent strategic announcements. The pattern was undeniable, systematic, professional. They'd turned my family into a weapon against me. The call from Ronan Keir came on a Thursday afternoon. My attorney's voice was measured as always, that careful neutrality lawyers cultivate. "Soren," he said, "I heard you postponed the Atlantic Partners negotiation. Everything all right?" "Fine," I said. "Just being cautious." "Cautious isn't usually your style. You're more of a strike while the iron's hot strategist." "Maybe I'm learning new tricks." Silence. Then, If something's wrong, you know client privilege is absolute. Whatever you tell me stays between us. I looked at the evidence folder on my desktop. 43 pages of documentation now. Timeline correlations, security footage, access logs, building entry records. All circumstantial, but damning in aggregate. The kind of case that destroys reputations and ends careers. Not yet, I said, but soon. I need you to look into ethics clauses in competitive intelligence situations, specifically regarding family relationships and corporate espionage. What are the enforcement mechanisms? What kind of evidence is required? What venues exist for formal complaints? Another pause. Ronan had been my attorney for 15 years. He knew when to push and when to wait, knew the difference between a hypothetical question and a loaded gun being assembled piece by piece. I'll have something for you by Monday, he said. Make it comprehensive. I want to understand every option, every consequence, every possible outcome. Soren, if you're planning what I think you're planning, I'm not planning anything yet. I'm preparing for possibilities. Those possibilities could destroy relationships, professional ones, personal ones. I understand. Do you? Because once you go down this road, there's no coming back. No reconciliation, no forgiveness. I know. That weekend, I drove out to the property where I'd planned to build our new production facility. 20 acres of empty land, purchased 6 months ago after 2 years of searching for the perfect location. The zoning had been a nightmare. Environmental assessments, traffic studies, community board meetings. But we'd cleared every hurdle, secured every permit. Until last week, when Marlowe announced they were exploring the adjacent parcel for similar purposes. Of course they were. I stood in the middle of that empty field and let myself feel it, the full weight of what my daughter had chosen. Not just the betrayal, but the calculation behind it. The way she'd weaponized my love, turned family dinners into intelligence operations. The way she'd looked me in the eye every month and smiled while stealing my life's work. She'd made her choice, picked Grant's career over my legacy, decided her future mattered more than my past. Fair enough. Now I'd make mine. I took photos of the property from every angle, documented the sightlines to Marlowe's planned location, noted the strategic advantages they'd gain by being adjacent to our facility, calculated the competitive damage, added it all to my growing file. By the time I drove home, the sun was setting. Long shadows stretched across the empty field, and I wondered if we'd ever build there now. If Marlowe's presence would poison the location, make it untenable. Probably. Just another thing they'd taken from me. Monday morning, I arrived at Trevon headquarters at dawn and didn't leave my office until nightfall. People whispered. Some thought I was having a breakdown. Others figured I was finally accepting reality, preparing to sell or step back. I heard the speculation in the elevator, in the parking garage, saw the knowing looks exchanged between executives who thought they understood what was happening. Let them speculate. I had work to do. The Regional Industry Summit was 11 days away. I confirmed my attendance and my speaking slot, the last presentation of the final day, perfect positioning for what nobody saw coming, the slot nobody wanted because everyone was tired, ready to leave, mentally checked out, exactly where I needed to be. Ronan's research arrived that afternoon via encrypted email. 28 pages of legal precedent, ethics regulations, and enforcement mechanisms. Corporate espionage through family relationships occupied its own special category of severity, especially when proprietary information led to direct competitive advantage. The penalties could be devastating: contract suspensions, partnership revocations, professional sanctions that followed individuals across industries, criminal referrals in extreme cases. But only if the evidence was airtight and the presentation was public enough to prevent quiet settlements. Private complaints could be buried, negotiated away, resolved with non-disclosure agreements that protected everyone's reputation. Public exposure was different. Public exposure created institutional pressure, forced regulatory bodies to act, made examples that rippled through entire industries. I studied every word, making notes in margins, highlighting passages, cross-referenced ethics codes with precedent cases. Built a mental model of exactly how this would unfold once I pulled the trigger. Then I called Ronan. I need you to prepare something, I said, a formal complaint to the Industry Ethics Board, but I don't want it filed yet. I want it ready, locked and loaded, waiting for my signal. Soren, I also need you to review our partnership contracts, specifically the integrity clauses. Tell me what triggers automatic suspension of joint ventures pending investigation. What language exists around ethical violations by affiliated entities? He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. You're talking about burning everything down. I'm talking about accountability. Oh, if you do this publicly, there's no going back. The lawsuits, the counter-allegations, the media scrutiny, everything gets exposed, every relationship gets examined, every decision gets questioned. I understand. And Liora. Have you thought about what this does to her? Professionally, personally, the permanent stain on her reputation? She made her choice, I said. Made it every month for half a year. Made it every time she unlocked my phone, every time she photographed confidential files, every time she smiled at me while planning my company's destruction. She's your daughter. She was my daughter. Now she's a corporate spy who happens to share my DNA. Silence. Then, I'll prepare the documentation. But Soren, promise me you'll think about this. Really think about it. Because once you do this, you can't undo it. I've been thinking about nothing else. The following week, I attended exactly 2 meetings. Both times, I said almost nothing, letting my leadership team carry the discussion. They seemed relieved, grateful even, happy to have clear authority without my interference. In the executive meeting room, Grant's name came up. Someone mentioned Marlowe's aggressive expansion, their smart strategic moves, their uncanny ability to anticipate market shifts. They've got good intelligence, one of my VPs said, a note of admiration in his voice. Almost like they can read our minds, like they're always one step ahead. I smiled and said nothing. Let them admire the enemy's brilliance. Let them wonder how Marlowe had gotten so good so fast. Soon enough, they'd understand. After the meeting, I found a quiet corner and made another call. This one to Dahlia Keir, Senior Compliance Officer for the Regional Technology Consortium. We'd worked together on industry standards committees for years. Served on panels together. Co-authored white papers on ethical business practices. She answered on the second ring. Dahlia, I said. Hypothetically, if someone had documented evidence of systematic corporate espionage, what would be the most effective venue for disclosure? Hypothetically, she sounded amused. The Summit Ethics Panel. Public record, industry witnesses, immediate regulatory scrutiny. Media presence ensures transparency. Peer pressure forces action. Why? Just curious about process. Soren, if you have something, you need to be absolutely certain. The backlash can be severe. People don't like watching comfortable illusions shatter. They'll resist the truth, attack the messenger, try to preserve the status quo. I understand. And if it involves family, she trailed off, leaving the implication hanging. People will remember that. Some will admire the commitment to principle. Others will call it cruel, vindictive, a disproportionate response. I know. Just make sure you can live with whatever judgment they render. Let them judge. Let them remember. Let them see what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. I spent the next 3 days reviewing every piece of evidence. Ethan had sent footage from 4 previous dinners, going back 5 months. In 3 of them, Liora accessed my phone during brief moments when I was away from the table. Same practiced movements. Same efficient photography. Same casual betrayal. 6 months of systematic extraction. Maybe longer. Maybe this had started before I'd even noticed, back when I still trusted completely. I compiled everything into a single presentation, kept it factual, clinical, stripped of emotion, timeline, evidence, correlation analysis, legal framework, recommended enforcement actions, no accusations. Just facts. Just truth laid out in undeniable sequence. Then I encrypted it and sent copies to 3 secure locations. Cloud storage under a pseudonym, physical backup drive in Ronan's office. A 3rd copy on a USB drive I kept on my keychain. Redundancy. Insurance. Protection against any attempt to suppress what I'd discovered. The summit was 4 days away. That Thursday, our monthly dinner happened as scheduled. I almost canceled. Considered making an excuse, claiming illness, avoiding the charade. But that would have been a tell, a warning they might recognize. A deviation from pattern that could alert them. So I went to Harlan's grill and sat across from my daughter and the man who'd helped her hollow out my trust. They were relaxed, confident. Grant talked about a new initiative at Marlowe, some partnership they were announcing at the summit. Big expansion plans, major market play. He was animated, excited, proud of what they were building. Liora mentioned possible travel plans, maybe a vacation after the new year, somewhere tropical. They'd been working so hard, they deserved a break. I nodded and asked questions and played the part they expected. The tired father, the declining executive, the man who didn't notice what was happening right in front of him. My phone sat on the table, face down. This time, I knew exactly what would happen when I stepped away. I excused myself after the entrees, walked to the restroom, and waited exactly 4 minutes. Timed it on my watch. Let them have enough time to feel safe, to execute their routine. When I returned, nothing looked disturbed. But I knew. And when I checked my phone later, in my car, I saw she'd accessed Project Meridian, our next major initiative. Still hungry. Still confident they were invisible. Still certain I suspected nothing. Perfect. The pressure started subtly, the way these things always do. Access permissions to certain shared folders changed without announcement. Not revoked, just delayed, requiring additional approvals. My assistant mentioned that some department heads were asking to report quarterly updates directly to the board rather than through me. Someone was testing boundaries, seeing how far they could push before I pushed back. I didn't. Instead, I let meetings get rescheduled around me, let decisions move forward without my signature. Watched my leadership team grow more comfortable operating independently, assuming authority I'd always held. They were preparing for my exit, building structures that would survive my departure, getting ready for whatever transition they thought was coming. At a compliance review 2 weeks before the summit, I noticed Dahlia reviewing documentation with extra scrutiny. Standard procedure, probably. But I caught her glancing my way twice, question marks in her eyes. She'd heard something. Rumors traveled fast in industry circles. Someone had probably mentioned my changed behavior, my reduced presence, my apparent disengagement. The whispers got louder. I heard them in the elevator, in the parking garage at the coffee station. Trevon's slowing down. Maybe it's time. His daughter works at Marlowe now, did you know? Married to one of their rising stars. Wonder if there's a succession plan there. Let them talk. Let them build their narratives. Let them convince themselves they understood what was happening. Grant appeared at an industry reception, confident and magnetic. I watched from across the room as he worked the crowd, shaking hands, making connections, telling stories that had people laughing. Several of my own partners spent time with him, clearly impressed by his energy, his vision, his strategic thinking. When he saw me, he raised his glass in greeting, smiled that easy smile, confident, unchallenged, certain of his position. I nodded back. Let him think I was harmless. Let him think victory was inevitable. Liora had stopped texting as frequently. Our communication had dwindled to brief exchanges, perfunctory check-ins. Hope you're well. Talk soon. Messages that said nothing and meant less. She was pulling away, maybe preparing for whatever she thought came next. Or maybe just busy helping her husband destroy me, planning their next move, celebrating their success. 3 days before the summit, I got a call from the event organizers. A small scheduling change. They wanted to add a final clarification period after my presentation, a chance for attendees to ask follow-up questions. Give me more time to engage with the audience. Interesting. I agreed immediately. Asked no questions. Gave them no reason to think I saw the shape of what they were building. Thanked them for the consideration. Wondered who'd suggested the change, who wanted me to have more rope with which to hang myself. That night, I sat in my home office with a single folder on my desk. Everything I needed, distilled into 30 slides, facts, evidence, conclusions, the complete dismantling of my daughter's future, organized into a clean, professional presentation, no emotion, no appeals to sympathy, no dramatic revelations, just the truth, presented with the same cold precision Liora had used when photographing my files. She'd made this clinical, treated family like a business operation. Now I'd return the favor. My phone rang around 10. Leora's name lit the screen. I stared at it, wondering what she wanted. If this was another extraction attempt, another manipulation, or maybe genuine connection, some part of her that still remembered we used to be family. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. 30 seconds later, she called again. Again, I let it ring out. On the third attempt, I turned my phone off entirely. Sat in the darkness of my office and listened to the silence. Wondered if she felt the distance growing. If some part of her sensed what was coming. If maternal instinct or daughterly intuition whispered warnings she couldn't quite articulate. Oh, probably not. Probably she was just annoyed I wasn't answering, inconvenienced by my unavailability. Tomorrow I'd be very available indeed. The next day, I confirmed attendance at a pre-summit networking reception. Saw the guest list. Grant would be there. Liora too. Several board members from both companies. Media, investors, industry analysts, everyone who mattered. I RSVP'd with enthusiasm. Mentioned I was looking forward to reconnecting with colleagues, discussing industry trends, building partnerships. Played the part perfectly. The reception was elegant, held in a hotel ballroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Crystal chandeliers, open bar, past appetizers. The kind of event where deals got made and alliances formed. I arrived alone, dressed in the same conservative suit I'd worn for 30 years. Navy blue, white shirt, understated tie, nothing flashy, nothing memorable. The uniform of a man who'd built his reputation on substance rather than style. I thought people greeted me warmly, and I saw the calculation behind their eyes. Weighing my relevance, measuring my decline, deciding how much effort to invest in maintaining our relationship. Grant held court near the bar, Liora beside him. They looked powerful together. Young, ambitious, ascending, everything the industry valued. She wore a red dress that made her stand out, drew eyes. He had his hand on her back, possessive and proud. They were performing success, broadcasting their position, making sure everyone saw them as the future. I got a drink and found a quiet corner, watched them work the room, watched people gravitate toward their energy and away from my stillness, watched my daughter laugh at someone's joke, her hand on Grant's arm, comfortable in her choice, confident they'd won. An investor I'd known for 20 years approached, asked gentle questions about succession planning. I gave vague, tired answers. Mentioned that leadership transitions were complex, that I was thinking about the future, saw relief in his expression, saw him mentally moving me into the past category. Good? Everyone should feel confident about what came next. Around 9, someone proposed a toast. To innovation, to progress, to the future of the industry. Everyone raised their glasses, including me. I caught Leora's eye across the room. For a moment, we looked at each other, father and daughter, two people who used to share everything. She smiled, small, uncertain, maybe wondering why I'd been distant lately, maybe feeling some residual guilt. I nodded back, gave her nothing. Tomorrow she'd understand everything. Around 10, I left without saying goodbye to anyone. Walked through the lobby, past groups of industry leaders planning tomorrow's sessions, past the bar where Grant was buying rounds for potential allies. In my hotel room, I opened my laptop and reviewed the presentation one final time, checked the embedded video files, verified the timestamps, made certain every citation was perfect, every claim supported, every conclusion unavoidable. Then I closed it and tried to sleep. Couldn't. Instead, I stood at the window and looked at the city lights, thinking about the moment tomorrow when everything would break, when I'd stand in front of industry leaders and methodically dismantle my daughter's future, when I'd prove that quiet discipline beats loud ambition. Some part of me waited for doubt, for hesitation, for the impulse to protect her one more time. It never came. She'd made this bed with deliberate, systematic care. Tomorrow she'd lie in it, and I'd make sure everyone watched. Summit morning arrived cold and bright. I dressed carefully, methodically. Same conservative suit, plain tie. Polished shoes, nothing flashy, nothing memorable. I wanted to look exactly like what they expected. A man past his prime, going through professional motions. In my briefcase, one encrypted flash drive, one sealed folder with hard copies of every piece of evidence, one bottle of water, one pack of mints, nothing else. Nothing they could question or confiscate or use against me. The summit occupied 3 floors of the convention center. Registration tables in the main lobby, morning panels in various conference rooms, networking lounges with coffee and pastries. I moved through it all like a ghost, nodding at familiar faces, deflecting questions about my presentation. Last slot's always tough, someone said sympathetically, a colleague who'd presented yesterday. Everyone's tired by then, ready to head home. I'll manage, I replied. What's your topic? Anything exciting? Industry standards, ethics compliance, the usual. He looked relieved. Boring topics for a boring time slot. Nothing that would keep him from making his flight. Perfect. I saw Grant during the lunch break, surrounded by executives from 3 different companies, animated and confident. He was telling some story about market disruption, gesturing with his hands, drawing people into his energy. He didn't notice me standing 30 feet away. Too busy being important, too certain of his position. Liora sat at a corner table with her phone out, typing rapidly. Work emails, probably. Or maybe coordinating with Grant about whatever they thought they'd accomplished, planning their next extraction, identifying their next target. I got coffee and found an empty conference room, locked the door, and went through my presentation again. Not rehearsing, just making sure, certain. Every slide reviewed, every transition smooth, every piece of evidence devastating. At 2:45, I made my way to the main ballroom. Early, but I wanted to see it fill up. Watch people settle in with the assumption that nothing interesting would happen in the final slot. The room could hold 400. Maybe half that would stay for my presentation. The rest would leave early, heading to airports, rushing back to their offices. Fine. I only needed the right people present. The compliance board, the ethics committee, the media representatives contracted to cover major announcements. The moderator, a consortium board member named Patricia Vance, greeted me professionally. She was maybe 60, sharp and efficient, with the bearing of someone who'd navigated industry politics for decades. "We've added that Q&A period you agreed to," she said. "Should give you a chance to really engage with the audience, answer any concerns, clarify positions." "Perfect," I said. "Your topic is listed as ethical standards in competitive intelligence. That's fairly broad. Are you planning anything specific?" "Very specific," I replied. Something flickered in her expression. Curiosity, maybe, or concern. But she didn't press, just nodded and moved on to check audio equipment. Dahlia appeared at 3:15, taking a seat in the second row. Strategic positioning, close enough to see details, far enough to maintain professional distance. She caught my eye and nodded once. Professional courtesy, nothing more. But I wondered what she suspected, if rumors had reached her, if she'd put pieces together. The room filled slowly. Maybe 200 people, a decent showing for the last presentation. Industry veterans who took their responsibilities seriously. Younger professionals trying to network until the final moment. A few journalists looking bored, probably obligated to stay for the full summit. Grant and Liora slipped in at 3:25, taking seats near the back. Easy exit access, close to the doors, they wouldn't need it. My presentation was scheduled for 3:30. Patricia gave the introduction, emphasizing Trevon Industrial's long history and my contributions to industry standards. Mentioned my 30 years of ethical leadership, my commitment to transparency, polite applause, the sound of people being professional, going through motions. I stepped to the podium and looked out at the room, saw faces I'd known for decades, partners, competitors, colleagues, people who'd watched me build something from nothing, people who thought they knew what kind of man I was. And in the back, my daughter, checking her phone, confident this would be forgettable, routine, safe. "Thank you all for staying," I began. "I know it's been a long day. I'll try to make this worth your time." Sympathetic chuckles, a few people settling deeper into their chairs, preparing to endure. I advanced to the first slide, not a company logo, not a product announcement, a date, 6 months ago, and a location, Harlan's Grill, private dining room. The room went quiet. "On this date," I said, my voice steady, clinical, "I had dinner with my daughter and son-in-law, a family tradition we'd maintained for several months, every fourth Thursday. Same restaurant, same room, same assumption of trust. The screen changed. Security camera footage. 4 angles of our private dining room. Timestamp visible in the corner. Clear, high resolution, undeniable. What I didn't know then was that these dinners served a dual purpose. I let the footage play. No sound, just video. Showing the table after I'd stepped away. Showing Liora reaching for my phone. Her practiced swipe, the screen unlocking, her thumbs moving across it, Grant watching the entrance, then her own phone rising, photographing the screen once, twice, 3 times. The room held its breath. Someone in the third row leaned forward. I heard a sharp intake of breath from somewhere on the left. Recognized the sound of people realizing this wasn't theoretical. This was real, documented, happening right in front of them. This is one of 6 documented instances over a 24-week period. Each time, proprietary information from Trevon Industrial was accessed and photographed without authorization. Next slide, a timeline. 2 columns. Left side showed our internal project milestones. Right side showed corresponding moves by Marlowe Corporation. The correlation is precise. Within weeks of each information extraction, Marlowe announced strategic initiatives that directly countered our competitive advantages. Let me walk you through the pattern. I showed them everything. March. We finalized automated processing specifications. April. Marlowe pivoted into automation with eerily similar parameters. June. We secured manufacturer partnerships. July. Marlowe approached the same companies with competing offers. September. We completed prototype testing. October. Marlowe filed patents anticipating our next development phase. For each instance, I displayed the timeline, showed the gap between our internal milestone and Marlowe's public response, demonstrated the systematic nature of the intelligence transfer. This isn't parallel development. This isn't market convergence. This is coordinated corporate espionage utilizing a family relationship to circumvent standard competitive intelligence barriers. Another slide, access logs from my building, showing Liora's visits. Dates and times. 6 instances where she'd signed in to meet me but accessed other floors while I was in external meetings. Building security footage confirms these visits. Guest Wi-Fi logs show data transfers during times when she was alone on our engineering floor. I displayed photographs of the Wi-Fi access records. Clinical, factual, undeniable. Grant Holloway holds a strategic development position at Marlowe Corporation. His marriage to my daughter provided access to information that would otherwise be protected by standard competitive intelligence barriers. Grant was on his feet now, face flushed red. This is absolutely ridiculous. You're making wild. Mr. Holloway, Patricia said sharply. You'll have an opportunity to respond during the Q&A period. Please sit down. He remained standing for another moment, then dropped back into his seat. Liora sat rigid beside him, staring at the screen where her face was frozen mid-theft. I advanced to the next slide, Legal Framework, Citations from the Industry Ethics Code. Section 4.7 of our ethics guidelines explicitly prohibits the exploitation of family relationships for competitive advantage. Section 4.7.3 specifically addresses systematic information extraction. The penalties include immediate contract suspension, partnership review, and potential removal from consortium membership. Dahlia was taking notes. Fast, focused. 3 other compliance board members were doing the same. I'm not here to argue interpretation. I'm not here to speculate about intentions. I'm here to present documented facts and request formal investigation per the procedures outlined in Section 9 of the consortium bylaws. I played more footage. Different dinners. Same pattern. Leora's practiced movements. Grant's surveillance of the room, the casual efficiency of repeated operation. These actions weren't impulsive. They weren't opportunistic. They were systematic, coordinated, and successful over a period of months. The timeline advanced again, showing how Marlowe had gained ground in 3 major markets using information they shouldn't have possessed. I quantified the damage. Market share lost, partnerships undermined, competitive advantages eliminated. The damage to Trevon Industrial is quantifiable. Approximately $40 million in lost opportunities based on conservative market analysis. 18 months of competitive advantage eliminated. Multiple partnerships compromised or lost entirely. I paused, looking directly at the compliance board members. But the larger issue is industry integrity. If family relationships can be weaponized for corporate espionage without consequence, we've abandoned the ethical foundation this consortium claims to uphold. We've created an environment where trust is a liability and family dinners are intelligence operations. Grant stood again. This is character assassination. You're publicly humiliating your own daughter because... I'm presenting evidence, I said calmly, cutting him off, which the compliance board is welcome to examine independently. Every piece of footage has been authenticated by third-party forensic analysts. Every timeline has been verified against public records. Every claim is supported by documentation. I clicked to the next slide. Email exchanges between myself and Ethan Moore, the bartender. His sworn statement, forensic analysis of the security footage, technical specifications proving the timestamps hadn't been altered. Mr. Ethan Moore, shift supervisor at Harlan's Grill, provided this footage after noticing suspicious behavior during his routine security review. His statement has been notarized and filed with the compliance board as of this morning. Dahlia raised her hand. Mr. Trevon, you're formally requesting investigation. I am. I've prepared comprehensive documentation for your review. 243 pages including sworn statements, forensic analysis, access logs, timeline correlations, and market impact assessments. And you understand that this investigation will be public, that all findings will be entered into consortium records? I understand completely. Patricia stood. I think we need to pause here. This presentation has raised extremely serious allegations that require immediate procedural review. Agreed, I said. I've completed my prepared remarks. But I wasn't done. I advanced to the final slide. A simple statement in black text on white background. Effective immediately, pursuant to contract integrity clauses in existing partnership agreements, Trevon Industrial is suspending all business relationships with entities that maintain active partnerships with Marlowe Corporation, pending the outcome of this investigation. The room erupted. People were standing, talking over each other, voices rising in shock and confusion. Several consortium members huddled near Dahlia, speaking in urgent whispers. Grant was shouting something about defamation and legal action. Someone from the media section was already on their phone. I disconnected my laptop and stepped away from the podium. My part was done. The machinery was in motion. Institutional accountability would grind forward now, whether anyone wanted it to or not. Patricia tried to restore order, calling for quiet, but the damage was done. The information was public, recorded by summit cameras, witnessed by 200 industry leaders. Irreversible. 2 security officers appeared, approaching Grant. Not arresting him, just escorting him from the ballroom per protocol. He resisted briefly, voice rising, making threats about lawyers and consequences. They guided him out anyway, professional, firm, following procedure. Liora didn't move, just sat there, frozen, staring at the empty screen where her face had been projected in high definition, staring at the evidence of her systematic betrayal displayed for everyone she'd ever worked with. I walked past her row without looking, didn't trust myself to see her expression, didn't want to know if she understood what she'd lost, if she grasped the magnitude of what I'd just done, if she realized this was permanent. In the corridor outside, Ronan was waiting. "It's filed," he said quietly. "Formal complaint with the ethics board, 3 separate regulatory agencies. Full documentation delivered by courier 30 minutes ago." "Good. Soren, you know what this means. The lawsuits, the counter-allegations, the scrutiny. Every decision you've made will be examined, every relationship questioned." "I know." "And Liora. Her career, her marriage, everything she's built." "She built it on stolen ground," I said. "Now it collapses. That's cause and effect. That's accountability." Behind us, I could hear raised voices, demands for clarification, the machinery of institutional accountability grinding into motion, compliance board members conferring, attorneys being called, crisis management protocols activating. Somewhere in that room, my daughter was realizing that family loyalty only mattered to the person who still believed in it. I'd given her every chance to stop, every month, every dinner, every quiet moment when she could have chosen differently, when she could have said no to Grant, no to the theft, no to the systematic destruction of everything I'd built. She'd chosen wrong every single time. Now she'd live with that choice in public record, in ethics violations, in professional disgrace that would follow her for decades. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited. The doors opened. I stepped inside, alone. The way she'd left me 6 months ago when she decided her husband's ambition mattered more than her father's legacy. The fallout started before I reached the lobby. My phone erupted with calls, board members, partners, media outlets, industry analysts. I silenced it and kept walking, footsteps echoing in the suddenly empty corridor. Ronan followed, keeping pace, speaking quietly about next steps, legal protocols, damage control strategies, response frameworks. I heard maybe half of it. The rest was just noise washing over me like distant thunder. Outside, the afternoon sun felt too bright. Wrong, somehow. Like the world should have acknowledged what just happened, should have dimmed in recognition of the relationship I'd just destroyed. But traffic moved normally. People walked past without noticing. Street vendors called out lunch specials. The city didn't care that I just burned my relationship with my daughter to ash. "The consortium board wants to meet tomorrow," Ronan said. 9 a.m. Preliminary review. They'll want your full documentation, witness statements, everything. They'll have it. Marlowe will fight this. Hard. They'll hire top attorneys, challenge every piece of evidence, try to discredit the footage. Let them try. We reached my car. I stood there, keys in hand, not quite ready to go anywhere. Not quite ready to return to the empty hotel room where I'd have nothing to do but think about what I'd done. "She'll call," Ronan said carefully. "Liora. Probably tonight. Maybe sooner. You should prepare for that conversation." "There's nothing to prepare. Soren, she had 6 months to talk to me, 6 months to stop, to choose differently, to value our relationship more than corporate intelligence. She's still your daughter. She was my daughter. Now she's a documented corporate spy who happens to share my DNA." Ronan nodded slowly. He'd known me long enough to recognize when argument was pointless, when I'd made a decision that no amount of reasoning would change. I drove back to my hotel, checked my phone in the parking garage. 47 missed calls, 63 texts, most from numbers I didn't recognize. Reporters, probably, sensing a story and closing in. 3 from Liora. I deleted them without reading, didn't want to see her excuses, her justifications, her attempts to make this about anything other than her deliberate, systematic betrayal. In my room, I opened my laptop and started going through emails. Legal filings from Ronan's office, media requests for comment, statements from consortium members. The machinery I'd set in motion was already running, gaining momentum, becoming unstoppable. Good. An email from Patricia Vance. Subject line: Emergency board session. Your attendance required. I opened it. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Closed session. My presence mandatory for initial testimony. I'd need to answer questions, provide context, defend my evidence against preliminary scrutiny. I replied, confirming attendance. Another email, this one from an industry publication. Request for statement regarding allegations against family member. I deleted it. Let them write whatever they wanted. The facts spoke for themselves. A knock at my door around 7. I checked the peephole. Dahlia. I let her in. She looked tired, worn, like she'd spent the past 3 hours managing crisis after crisis. The board is convening an emergency session, she said without preamble. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Your evidence is being reviewed by an independent forensic team tonight. They'll work through the night to verify authenticity. How thorough will they be? Extremely. This is exactly the kind of case that destroys institutional credibility if we get it wrong. If we accuse someone falsely, if we act on fabricated evidence, the consortium loses all moral authority. She studied me with that sharp compliance officer's gaze. You knew this would detonate everything. Knew it would create institutional chaos, career destruction, family devastation. Yes, and you did it anyway. She gave me no choice. Dahlia was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. For what it's worth, the preliminary review suggests your documentation is solid. The footage appears authentic. Timeline matches public records. Access patterns are damning. The forensic team hasn't found any signs of manipulation. So, what happens next? Marlowe gets suspended from consortium partnerships pending full investigation. Probably 3 to 6 months minimum. Grant faces potential ethics violations that could follow him industry-wide. Professional sanctions, possible criminal referrals. And Liora? She's not a consortium member, so direct penalties are limited. But her professional reputation is effectively finished. Nobody's going to trust her with proprietary information ever again. She'll be radioactive in this industry. I nodded. Felt nothing. Soren, I have to ask, was there any other way? Was there any possibility of resolving this privately? You mean a way that didn't involve public exposure? Yes. I could have confronted them privately. Let them know I knew. Maybe negotiated some quiet resolution, non-disclosure agreement, financial settlement, promises to stop. Why didn't you? I looked out the window at the darkening city, because that would have required them to feel shame, to value our relationship enough to stop voluntarily, to care about the damage they'd done. You don't think they would have? I think they would have gotten better at hiding it, more careful, more sophisticated, would have kept stealing until they'd taken everything. Dahlia stood, preparing to leave. The hearing tomorrow will be intense. Be prepared for pushback. Marlowe's attorneys will try to discredit your evidence, attack your motivations, paint you as a vindictive father punishing his daughter for choosing her husband. Let them try. They'll argue you had other motives: professional jealousy, fear of competition, anger at being outmaneuvered in the market. The evidence doesn't care about motive. She paused at the door. One more thing. There's already media coverage, industry publications running stories, some of them sympathetic to you, others questioning your methods. By tomorrow, this will be national news. I understand. After she left, I ordered room service I didn't eat, watched the news coverage start trickling in online, industry publications already running headlines. Corporate espionage allegations rock regional summit. Father exposes daughter's role in intelligence theft. Family betrayal. CEO presents evidence against own child. The articles made it sound dramatic, emotional. A personal tragedy played out in professional context. It wasn't, it was just mathematics. Evidence plus consequences equals accountability. Simple causation. Around midnight, my phone rang. Liora. I stared at her name on the screen until it stopped. She called again immediately. Again. On the 4th attempt, I answered. Silence on the other end. Then softly, voice breaking. Dad, please, just let me explain. I hung up. She didn't call back. I sat in the darkness and waited for guilt, for second thoughts, for the paternal instinct to protect her. Even now, it never came.